Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news stories of the day through the papers of yesterday. The RNLI, 200 years old, an incredible institution. Formed here, of course, on the Isle of Man. Perhaps not quite as many stories in the papers, it seems, as you might think if you just look for RNLI. But some interesting pieces do come up. Going back to 1896, the Ramsey Weekly News, Sunday, August the 29th of that year. Lifeboat Sunday, the outdoor demonstration. The article is entitled, A Splendid Collection. It is now customary throughout the British Isles to set a day apart for the raising of funds for the National Lifeboat Institution, and it is pleasant to notice that for the past few years, Ramsey has proved no exception to the rule. By the untiring efforts of the local committee, the movement has grown more into public favour each succeeding year, and it was extremely gratifying to witness the large number of people who turned out on Sunday to support the cause. By invitation of the committee, the various friendly societies of the town, comprising the Rechabites, to the number of around 68, the Oddfellows, 130, and the Foresters, 98, joined in a procession along with the members of the lifeboat crew and the rocket brigade. Not astronaut rockets, I don't think. The muster was at the lifeboat house, and the processionists marched through the principal streets of the town, accompanied by the Foxdale and Laxey brass bands. All along the route, crowds of interested spectators lined the procession in, all moving towards the Moorick Park, where a platform had been erected for the speakers. Here thousands of people had gathered, groups dotting the slopes of the cliffs. The 5th LVA Band, by the kind permission of the commanding officer Colonel Hunt, was in attendance and played throughout the whole of the service. The Reverend Canon Hopkins from St Olaf's presided. It goes on to say the sum collected in the park was £43, 10 shillings and 3 pence. The after-dinner collection realised £54, 7 shillings and 7 pence. A lot of money in those days. While Messrs Keir and Allen's minstrel troupe raised £2, 2 shillings and 7 pence, making the magnificent total of £100 and 5 pence. The expenditure amounted to 10 shillings, £10, 15 shillings and 6 pence, thus leaving a residue of £89, 4 shillings and 11 pence. A few more sums have yet to be collected, we're told, and these will bring up the amount to be handed over to the Lifeboat Institution to around £90. This is a splendid result of the efforts of the promoters of the movement, and thanks of all are due to Mr J. Norbury, the chairman, and Mr G. Harker, the honorary treasurer. It is furthermore pleasing to testify to warm-heartedness of the residents and visitors alike. Their sympathy with this great and noble life-saving institution was manifested to a brilliant degree, and it is hoped that the RNLI will never lack a plentiful supply of funds. 1899, amen to that. 1896, still going strong, still raising money. Skipping forward 3 years to 1899, the Ramsey Weekly News, Sunday, May the 6th, Man the Lifeboat, an interview with Mr Chas Dibden, the secretary of the RNLI. In the New Penny magazine for April 22nd appears an interesting account of an interview with Mr Dibden, secretary of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, and a perusal of it, we feel sure, will repay the time spent. However, it is our intentions to only give here such extracts as will convey to the reader's mind the great value of this life-saving institution, and to impart to them several facts concerning the work of the Society. It goes on to tell us it was founded in 1824, as we know, being the bicentenary, by Sir William Hilary under the patronage of King George IV and 4 royal dukes, and was christened by its founders the Royal National Institution for the Preservation of Life from Shipwrecks, which indeed it was. Fairly long-winded, we are told, in 1899, but also fairly descriptive. The Isle of Man, the home of Sir William Hilary, was the first theatre of the new society's activities, and here the first lifeboat was launched in 1826. From that time to 1853, when the name was changed and the institution reorganised, the work was conducted in a very half-hearted sort of way. Local associations were more or less encouraged to build boats. The honorary secretaries of local branches asking them to prevail on the clergy and ministers of their districts to hold an annual Lifeboat Sunday, when collections should be made in the churches in aid of our institution. Some enterprising gentlemen in Lancashire substituted Lifeboat Saturday, with collections in the street. The notion was eventually taken up at headquarters, and we held the Lifeboat Saturday in London in 1896. I should think there was never such a body of collectors employed in a street collection in the history of charities. Why, there were 6 duchesses canvassing the streets of London. That ought to have, we are told the interviewer said. Oh, yes, it did, says Mr. Dibden. My experience is that when you want a collection, you ought to enlist the services of the ladies. As a matter of fact, Lifeboat Saturday is largely worked by the gentler sex. The headquarters of the fund is not at this office. There is a separate committee under the presidency of the Duke of York. Another most important event was the Parliamentary Commission that sat from the 6th of April to the 7th of July in 1897 to inquire into the administration of the institution and into the adequacy of its organisation for saving life on our coast. Terrific stuff from Mr. Dibden there. There's a lovely piece at the end about payment as well, where the interviewer asks, I should ask you, Mr. Dibden, how you pay the men who man the boats. Certainly, says Mr. Dibden. Every boat is in charge of a coxswain superintendent. We always select, on the recommendation of the local committee, the most steady, reliable and skilful boat sailor we can get. We pay him £8 per annum as a sort of retaining fee and for looking after the boat and gear. Then there is the assistant cox who gets £2 per annum. The cox also gets 10 shillings a year per tank for boats filled with water ballast, and the assistant 5 shillings. The permanent bowman has £1 10 shillings retaining fee, the signalman £1. In addition, they receive the ordinary pay when they actually go out on life-saving duty. In other words, nothing, or next to nothing, although I suppose it would be some extra money there back in the day. But as we know, the men and women put their lives at risk to save others, not for the glory of the money, because they are those sort of people. The Ramsey Courier, Friday, April the 1st, 1932, RNLI celebration in May. Now, this is the centenary of the opening of the Tower of Refuge on Conister Rock in the centre of Douglas Bay, which was built in 1832 as a place of safety for the crews of vessels wrecked on this dangerous rock. It'll be celebrated in May next, we are told. The tower was built owing to the efforts of Sir William Hillary, founder of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who resided at Fort Anne and who himself took part in the rescue of the crews of several vessels which were wrecked on Conister Rock. For the centenary, Sir Godfrey Baring, Bart, chairman of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, will visit the island and be the guest of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. On May the 9th, there will be a celebration and display by the Douglas Lifeboat and Rocket Brigade. It has also been suggested Ramsey and Port Erin boats should also take part. All the lifeboat committees on the island will take part in the demonstration, and the tower will be visited by Sir Godfrey Baring and the Mayor of Douglas. A tablet will be placed on the tower by the corporation. In the evening, there is to be entertainment in the Gaiety Theatre, 1932. Congratulations to Christopher Quayle. In 1935, he was a scholar at Domain Road, a school I went to a little bit later on. This was in the Isle of Man Examiner from Friday, June the 14th, 1935. Christopher J. Quayle, a scholar at Domain Road Elementary School, Douglas, has won a certificate in the Duke of Northumberland's annual essay competition in connection with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, being among the list of 35 prize winners in the North West of England district. The certificate was presented to him at the school this very Friday morning in the presence of his schoolmates and local officials of the RNLI. The Mona's Herald on Tuesday, July the 4th, 1944, reminds us that, of course, the activities of the RNLI continued despite the fact there was a war on. In the 4 years, we are told in the Mona's Herald, and 9 months of war, the lifeboats of the RNLI have rescued 5,661 lives and won 204 medals for gallantry. The Green Final on Saturday, February the 19th, 1955, somewhat after the war, tells us there's been an RNLI meeting in Douglas. The public gave more support to the appeal in Douglas for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution last year than in 1953. It was reported at the annual meeting. The Flag Day collections, we heard about those earlier on, were up by £214 to £795, and there were slight increases in donations, contribution boxes and after-dinner collections, but annual subscriptions at £82 were £7 down. The meeting with the Lieutenant Governor, who's the patron in the chair, agreed that £400 be remitted from the branch to RNLI headquarters, £100 more than a year ago. And finally, the Isle of Man Times, Friday, July the 27th, 1956. The Port Erin branch of the RNLI held a successful fete day on Tuesday, when the morning session consisted of sandcastle competitions on the foreshore under fair weather conditions. During the evening there were sports events on a field loaned by Mr. Robert Comish, the day ending with a dance in Bradder Glen. During the evening, proceedings in the Russian Silver Band. During the evening sports proceedings, the Russian Silver Band, under its conductor, Mr. Leslie Cool, played selections. Also, during the day, collectors were out, and as a result of their efforts, nearly £80 was collected on behalf of the branch. And in 1956, again, I would say that was a goodly sum. It's still going strong. They still have their collections. They still have flag days. They still have evening concerts and such like, all for a magnificent cause started by Sir William Hillary here on the Isle of Man. It was news then. It's new now. It's old news. It's new news. It'll always be there, we like to hope. Until next week, cheerio.
You're gonna be yesterday's news.